I was walking around Antelope Island in the Great Salt Lake and came across these signs that mentioned that only brine flies and brine shrimp are capable of surviving in the hypersaline waters of the Great Salt Lake. I had a few reasons to doubt that sign. I'm Michael Werner. I'm an assistant professor in the School of Biological Sciences at the University of Utah. And I mostly study development, and I use a small roundworm called a nematode to get at genetic and molecular mechanisms of how development works. That nematodes make up 90% of all animal life on the ocean floor, 80% of all animal life on the terrestrial biosphere. They can be found in every environment that you can possibly imagine, from the bottoms of the oceans to the tops of the mountains, as well as parasitizing humans and insects. And they are remarkably resilient. So there's a collaborator of mine, Byron Adams, who works at BYU, and his research program is to go down to Antarctica into the McMurdo Dry Valleys, which is the coldest and driest place on the planet. And he actually finds nematodes that live there, and more than one species, in fact. Nematodes have also been found miles below the surface without any access to sunlight. They were recently found in Mono Lake, which is another sort of saline lake similar to the Great Salt Lake. And about a year ago, there was this amazing story of nematodes being found frozen in permafrost from the Siberian tundra. And they were able to thaw that ice, and the worms came out alive. They radiocarbon dated the ice that they were in, and it was 30,000 years old. So these nematodes have been alive in a dormant state for more than 30,000 years. So they're just a fascinating animal phylum. And so when I saw that sign, I thought, okay, maybe not. Let's see if there are any worms out there. When we think about, potentially extraterrestrial places where life might be found, we are wanting to know what are the conditions that might allow it. And now we've pushed that limit, at least for nematodes. And then in the Great Salt Lake, it also just sort of reframes what we think we knew about it. I really have to highlight the amazing work that Bonnie Baxter and colleagues have done in this space to catalog some of the biodiversity and microbes that live out there, including the microbialites. And now we've added another layer of information to this story. So microbialites are these organosedimentary structures. So you might see these weird-looking rocks out on Antelope Island on the beach, and they're actually not totally rocks. They're sort of rocks built by bacteria, and they're formed over hundreds and sometimes thousands of years of multiple sediment layers of bacteria. And the outer surface are photosynthetic bacteria and algae that serve as one of the main primary producers in the Great Salt Lake. And then there's thought to be sort of lower lithified layers below it. And they're also really important for providing food for brine flies. So brine fly larvae, their main habitat in the lake is feeding on these bacteria in microbialites. And they can also occasionally serve as a food source for brine shrimp as well. I went out there with empty bins and tins from takeout or empty cracker cans that I had, and just scooped up soil and brought it back and did what is commonly done in the field, which is called a Behrman funnel technique, where you just put the sediment in a funnel and then allow the water to drain out, and nematodes will typically come with it. And we were not able to find any nematodes that way. Then I went up to BYU, to Byron Adams' lab, and he showed me how he finds nematodes when he goes sampling in Antarctica. And then we started that was one of many breakthroughs in this project, where we started to find 1 nematode, 5 nematodes, 7 nematodes in the Great Salt Lake. And we were over the moon with that result, because we knew we had found something really new here, only the third metazoan that lives in the Great Salt Lake. And then I was chatting with my postdoc, Julie June, one day. She came in while I was working on my computer and said, "Michael, I think they might be in the microbialites." And I sort of thought, oh, that's interesting, and I went back to my desk and I started typing more, and then all of a sudden I hear bang, 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 and I walk out into the lab and Julie is taking a hammer to a microbialite and just smashing it to pieces. She then took that smashed sediment and put it through this density centrifugation method we use, and then she found hundreds and in some cases thousands of nematodes. And so that was again another breakthrough in this project. And so from study, based on that initial result and then follow-up studies, we've come to appreciate that the nematodes in the Great Salt Lake really live inside the microbialites. Nematodes are known to contribute to niche construction in other habitats through nutrient cycling and through this process called bioturbation, where simply them moving through sediment and creating pores can transfer microbes as well as nutrients and oxygenate an area. And could those processes contribute to the formation of microbialites, which if true, then of course we know microbialites are super important for the overall ecosystem and health of the lake and the migratory bird populations. We sequence a specific region of the genome of these nematodes that we recovered from the Great Salt Lake. And if you look at that sequence, it looks like we have at least one and possibly many other new species of previously undiscovered nematodes. But the next step going forward is to sequence more portions of the genome and do really fine-scale anatomical and morphological measurements to figure out exactly how many species, who they are, and also I think a really exciting area is where did they come from. 15,000 years ago, this area was completely covered in a freshwater lake. So if a nematode that now lives in a hypersaline environment was previously in a freshwater environment, that's an enormous task for evolution. And before that freshwater Lake Bonneville, this area was also saline. So did it go from saline to fresh to saline again? Or did it come in from another saline environment? And if so, where and how? Another fascinating part of this work that we realize is family of nematodes that these worms belong to is called Monohistiridae. Monohistiridae are the dominant metazoan in deep sea hydrothermal vents and many areas of the sort of abysmal zone of the ocean. And so they clearly have this fascinating ability to colonize extreme environments, and how did they get to the Great Salt Lake is an area of research that we're really interested in following up.